Trojans, college football fans, welcome to another episode of Trojans Talk on Tap. We got a live show tonight, a live stream. We are going to get into the latest on Florida State and what has happened to college football, the playoff. And if you remember last week, I had an episode talking about the college football playoff snub of Florida State and what exactly happened there. Pleased to have on this evening from YouTube, Renegade report, JenNole2013. She is a passionate Florida State fan. She's going to give us the latest on what's going on with Florida State. So stay tuned.
Go Trojans go, LBC pouring Cardinal and gold. The next man up is the next Heisman. Only bleed USC, yes we've been built to win. Catch roses while we ball all across the map. Too strong, fight on as Trojan Talk on tap.
And with that, let's bring on JenNole2013. Glad to have you on this episode of Trojans Talk on Tap. Jen, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be on. I appreciate it.
Oh, great to have you. Trojans out there, Jen is passionate about Florida State as much as I am passionate about USC and college football. And I caught her show on she's the co-host of Renegade Report on YouTube. I caught a live stream Sunday morning, and I was following you on Twitter because I saw some of the things that you were saying, and you were 100%. So tell us our viewers here a little bit about yourself, how long you've been. I think you also do a post-game show on Mark Rogers, the voice of college football. Is that correct?
Well, I actually have done a couple on Mark Rogers because my co-host George, he's the one who does that.
Okay.
So he's brought me on now that I've come onto the Renegade Report. So we've done a couple of those. And I'm just a Florida State junkie, a little bit of a fan, sort of. I live in Memphis, Tennessee. And so when I was actually born and raised here, but when Mike became the coach at Florida State, it was kind of a full circle moment for me because obviously I was a huge Florida State fan. And when they hired him away from Memphis, seeing what he did at Memphis, it's been amazing to watch him then do it at Florida State because I don't think people know how bad that program was, like how bad of shape that program was when he took it over and what a job he's done. And then, just even in the first year, COVID hit. He really didn't have recruiting ties. He wasn't familiar with the area. He couldn't meet the players. He couldn't recruit, and so for people criticizing even just his first year is a little unfair because he couldn't even remove players from the team because their APR was so bad. It was bad. He couldn't, he's really done an amazing job. And I guess what's always worried me is there's two jobs that I'd be worried about Mike with. And one is USC and the other is Ohio State. So let's hope none of that happens.
Well, I remember watching, what was going on. And first off, very sorry for Jordan Travis. He is a phenomenal football player. And I enjoyed the kickoff game against LSU, and you guys destroyed LSU. Yep. Credit to the Seminoles for, how they like to play the game. They like to go to a neutral site. They don't like to play at home and home. They claim to be the best conference. And hey, look, they are historically. Until this year, but I think goes without saying the Pac-12 was the deepest and the best conference. Just look at results. out of conference win and loss records. ACC was better than the SEC too, but they tend to have short-term memory and lived on the previous years, which, hey, when they were good for so long, that is understandable. But then you have Florida State also. You play your rivalry game with Florida, and that was at the Swamp with a backup quarterback. And
at night.
And I let people have it. It's like, look, 84 players. What are you going to say to the 84 players? A football team is not just one player. There's more than one player. And college football, it's great. It's a beautiful sport with all the warts. It's glorious, but it's got its imperfections. And I have nothing against the SEC. I have everything against the College Football Playoff Committee and ESPN. It's a business, and it's a dirty business. And it's been dirty for decades.
It has.
It has. And so USC fans, you understand 2003. Ironically, it's 20 years. And in that system, it was called the BCS or just BS, because never before, when you dealt with the computers and the AP poll, the college football poll, when USC got left out and we claimed an AP championship, those people in the South claimed that we never won a championship. Even though we started off that year, we went into Auburn, who was the highest ranked team in the SEC that year in 2003, and you beat Auburn 23-0 in their house. So Trojans.
Oh, but they don't count that. Don't worry about that. That's not real. If it was at the first of the year, SEC fans don't count losses if it happens at the first, like in the first couple of games of the year. Those don't count.
Yeah,
and neither does ESPN, by the way. Neither does ESPN. So if an SEC team loses in September, early October, they don't count.
So I want you to set up what you were doing that day, where you're watching the game. I'm going to go ahead and show you something real quick, and I'll show everybody that's on the chat. I got a friend who is one of those SECers that roots for a team that is not Alabama or Georgia.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And yeah. And so he was texting me, and he said, everybody's rooting for the Cards to avoid controversy tomorrow. And I told him I'm the biggest FSU fan. And he says, Pearl Harbor, Kennedy assassination, 9/11. If the SEC doesn't make the Final Four, the day will live in infamy. So that's kind of what we're dealing with. And he said, I hear you doing the tomahawk chop here at the bottom of the hill. Damn right I was. And I was also giving the middle finger to ESPN as I was doing that tomahawk chop, because I kind of knew, I didn't think it would happen, especially if Florida State won, and to do what they did. And that defense was electric. There's a transfer from Western Michigan. He was a defensive lineman, and he was down to Florida State and USC. And you guys got him, along with him, with Jared Verse. They were once, it was Fiske. Was it Fisk or Fiske?
Oh, Brayton Fisk. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Yes. He's amazing.
Those guys would not let that team lose.
No.
And you guys won. So tell me, where were you watching the game? And after you won, let us know about your emotions and what you thought was going to happen.
So I'm going to have to take it back a couple of weeks, because I don't know if anybody remembers, and I'm not trying to bring out my ESPN receipts just yet, but the day that Florida State played North Alabama, which is the game that Jordan Travis got hurt, right?
Yep.
It was a night game. It was senior night. So the morning of game day, ESPN, by the way, had started Florida State could be left out if Alabama beats Georgia. That's when it started. It started that day. Jordan wasn't even hurt yet. So they're 100% lying to you now with them saying, oh, we only thought he should be out because Jordan was hurt. They started it way early. They started actually the day he got hurt. And so where I was when I was watching the game, because you never thought, you heard a bunch of people say, well, I mean, if they win, they're in. You're an undefeated Power 5, you're in. At the end of the day, if the committee had done what they normally do, the debate would have been between Texas and Alabama. Florida State should have been a shoo-in, just like Washington just like Michigan. That's it. But I mean, bottom line, the way everything goes, I don't want to hear about four best. They've never done four best. We all know this. That's a crap thing. They've never done that. I don't want to hear about blowoffs in the playoffs. There's been more blowoffs in the playoffs than close games. Don't want to hear that either. You know, nobody had a problem with the ACC schedule when Clemson was being allowed in. Not one person. So after they won that game, honestly, I got to tell you, when it was the muff punt or the block punt, I guess. I don't know if you guys were watching Louisville, like, blocked a punt. They were at, they're saying my sound is off. I'm going to jump out and get right back in.
Okay.
I'm going to jump out and get right back in.
Hold on. We're going to try to improve the sound here. Apologize for that. Thanks to everybody who's joining into the chat. If you've got some questions for JenNole2013, glad to have her here on the channel to give us an update on what's going on with Florida State. We're going to get into it with kind of what the vibe is there in terms of the ACC. We know that's been an issue, and the rumor of them trying to get to the Big Ten. Let's try Jen one more time.
Okay. Sorry, guys.
How's
is that
that
better? Can anybody tell me if that's better?
That's a lot.
Okay. I was worried it was probably my dog. She jumped in my lap, and I think she messed up my computer.
Oh, what is your dog's name?
Her name is Ruby.
Ruby.
She's a bad girl. She wants, yeah, she's a bad girl, but she's a mama's girl. She wanted my lap. So when they blocked that punt, I remember I was texting back and forth, just like, oh my God. But then that defense, that was only 11 in the red zone. Like, that was, and they didn't score. That defense, I'm sorry, they were on fire, and they were on fire versus Florida. They were on fire. I just, anybody who says now that defense can't win championships, I'm over them. I don't want to hear from you anymore. I don't. I just don't. It's ridiculous. It's honestly, it's so, yeah, after it was over. But again, let me go back, because after the UNA game, when Jordan was hurt, I remember saying, this is exactly what they're going to do. This is what they're going to do. This is the narrative they're going to spin. I said it to Florida. I even said it on my show that night after the game. And I didn't think the committee would do it. I knew that's the narrative ESPN was going to start pushing, because they had already pushed it that morning before he was hurt. So I was a little prepared for it, but I really wasn't prepared that the committee would actually do it. I didn't think they would do it.
Well, this is well orchestrated. As you'd mentioned, the narrative after that victory against North Alabama, where Jordan Travis got hurt, and you noticed it, it was starting to change, because let's be honest, this is about money. Okay. And when you got stupid idiots, and I'm going to repeat, stupid idiots that are mouthpieces for ESPN. And for instance, this guy, condolences to Florida State. They were fantastic, but blame no further than TCU. If they hadn't got destroyed 65-7 in a national title game the year before, things may have been different. But we don't need the potential of another slaughter, because FSU doesn't have a QB. Could not risk it. Okay. That is the most idiotic statement I've ever heard, but he is a mouthpiece. They told him what to say to the stupid masses who are out there. He's got 6 million followers. They're trying to justify it. Hey, idiot, Stephen A. Smith, stay in your lane. Stick to the NBA. You know nothing about college football. You're a pawn. You're told what to do and what to say. So the reason why he said that, in my opinion, I want to get your take, is that, hey, first of all, TCU beat Michigan.
Absolutely.
But the national championship game was not the way it was supposed to be. And they lost a lot of money. And they probably had to give givebacks on ad revenue, because it was just a horrible game. And they don't want to have that again. And the potential to have that, again, he used the word risk it, right? They didn't want to have a risk of number one going against number 4, let's say Florida State. I think Florida State could give Michigan a run for their money.
I think
Michigan
Florida
hasn't
State would
played
beat
in-
Michigan.
Oh, totally.
I
But they-
100% do. Yeah.
What is your take on that tweet by Stephen A. Smith? If you saw it?
So I think that's just the narrative they want to pull. I think that is, I think at the end of the day, ESPN, if the SEC didn't make it into the college football playoff, would lose money because of their situation with the SEC. And the funny thing about this is they keep comparing Florida State to TCU. Florida State's not TCU. They're not TCU of last year. They've never been TCU. They're acting like Florida State is the sisters of the poor. You know, they're acting like this is a G5 school. At the end of the day, Florida State 10 years ago was Alabama. Like, I don't know what anybody wants to say about this, but they're not like a down brand. They're like one of the top national brands. But this was about their relationship with the SEC. And I also think it was about the fact that Florida State wants out of the ACC. ESPN has so much money tied in with the ACC network, and the ACC network makes money off of Florida State fans basically alone.
Yeah.
Nobody else is watching women's lacrosse, guys, and that's what they show. What they show on the ACC network that people actually watch is some of their football coverage. And guess who watches it? Florida State fans. Not even Clemson fans, guys. I hate to break that news to you. So this is it was a horrible coincidence of things that all came true. And honestly, I even think if Jordan wasn't hurt, I think the situation would have still been the same.
Yeah, and here is, did you watch College Game Day that morning, the championship Saturday morning?
I did.
Okay. What was your impression of Greg Sankey and what he had to say that morning?
Well, I mean, you know, the Sesame Street one thing isn't like the other. He's purporting his league. And what really disgusts me is that him and Nick Saban have weekly shows on ESPN. Where was Jim Phillips of the ACC? I can tell you he was probably watching a women's lacrosse game because that's all they care about. Or hanging out at the set of whatever North Carolina was doing, whether it was basketball, get like a practice or something, who knows? That's all they care about in the ACC. They don't care about the moneymaker. There's only one moneymaker in the ACC. They're really, I mean, I don't know what to tell anybody.
Jim Phillips might as well be Larry Scott. And for those ACC, or for those Florida State fans, if you don't know about Larry Scott, he's the reason why there is not a Pac-12.
Exactly.
USC built football out here. And Oregon fans will debate that, just like Clemson fans will debate that against Florida State. Miami will have their say. But no, USC is feared and respected on a national level when USC is right. Okay. Uncle Phil is supporting Oregon. Trojan fans know that. Oregon,
right,
desperately wants to win, but
they have none. Yeah.
They are. So do you think Miami and Florida State and Alabama and LSU care about Oregon? No, they don't.
No.
They don't want USC to be good. And there's powers that took down USC, and there's a reason for that. I'm not wearing a tinfoil hat. It's history. We saw that in 2003. For those of you that are a little bit older, we saw that in 1978. This was similar to what you're seeing this year with Sarkisian going down and beating Saban in Tuscaloosa. Back in 1978, USC went into Birmingham because they didn't go into Tuscaloosa. They played neutral sites. And let's face it, Bear Bryant was in his 21st year at Alabama, and he's much like Nick Saban right now. He was a god. And back then, they decided who the national champion was by the AP and the UPI, the coaches, the sports writers, and the coaches. And there were very few games on national TV back then. And so it was the sports writers building up Bear Bryant because he was intimidating. He was God back then. And not many people went into Birmingham and beat Alabama. So USC goes down there and beats them by 10. Tell me if you heard this story before.
And that's
they
when
lost
what?
one game.
Yeah.
They lost one game to ASU. But USC played an extra game that year because they played Hawaii. So USC finished 12-1. Alabama finishes 11-1. And they split the national championship. So there was dirty pool back then. And then what happened to USC in 2003? It's an imperfect system, right? And this is an imperfect system. How you come up with a college football playoff with 4 teams, but yet not every conference plays 9 league games. The SEC.
Well, we know the SEC doesn't.
Right. And I call it the shell game because they want to keep their teams with 1 fewer loss. You have more preseason teams.
And they play nobody out of conference.
Exactly. So, and they very rarely will play a home and home anymore. They'll play a neutral site. They've got their FCS cupcake because they want to help those poor schools out. It's a charity case.
Worked out well for Auburn.
Yeah, exactly. So things haven't changed. And I can't believe that an undefeated Power 5 team like Florida State was left out. But at the same time, I can believe it because unfortunately, you guys got what I call the Pac-12 treatment because we had a commissioner much like Jim Phillips that didn't take care of his conference. And you can't blame Craig Sankey because he's a ruthless businessman. And
he was doing what he's paid to do.
Exactly. And ESPN knows his language. It's all about money. And I feel bad for Florida State. I feel bad for his fans. But at the bottom line, Jen, they only wanted 1 pissed off team. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
If they left the SEC out, they would have 14 crazy fan bases.
Oh, I know. And I mean, and that's why they did it. But that's the problem, I think, because those kids were just told their whole season didn't matter.
Yeah.
Like and then people are like, well, you got to go beat Georgia. Well, if those kids decided to opt out of that game, I'm sorry, I don't blame them. They were literally just told everything they did, suiting up, getting on that field, getting injured was for nothing. Was for what? A bowl game? Now I get it. Bowl games matter. A lot of, players, it matters to them. But for the kids going to the NFL that are NFL eligible, why would they do that? Why?
You bring up a good point. So I want to ask you, what is the mood right now around Florida State in terms of playing in the Orange Bowl? Is that something that the players have now had time to reflect a little over a week? What's the thought?
So there's been a few that have, declared for the draft. Obviously, I think, like Johnny Wilson, I haven't seen an official word from Keon Coleman, but I assume that's not happening either. But there are some rumors that the Jared Verse is going to play. There are some rumors that, that defense is like, we're going to finish what we wanted to do. Like, we'll see. I am not 100% confident in that, but I think those defensive players are a little pissed off because they thought they really did everything they needed to do to win, So I think they would like to finish it. But like I said, we'll see. I mean, I'm sure their agents will maybe get in their ear. I think that could just be more of emotion right now. And again, I don't blame them if that's how I can't hate on that kid. He put, anybody put their life and everything, just getting up every day, working like that. And then to just be said, well, you're not good enough. I know you won all your games. You didn't win pretty enough.
The irony here is, back before the SEC discovered the forward pass and a multifaceted offense, they all claimed about the defense, how defense wins championships. And we heard that out in the Pac-12. You guys don't play any defense.
I mean, I'm old enough to remember LSU, Alabama 9-6, and it was a wonderful championship game because it was just a gritty, gutsy performance.
Well, they called that the game of the century, if you remember.
Oh, I do.
I have my friend who's one of those SECers from an SEC East team who reminded me that almost every one of those players on the defense was drafted in the NFL. So yeah, no, that was totally different. You can't compare apples to apples today. But let's not forget, there was a winning field goal in overtime. That game didn't even have a touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild. And and the other thing that really bothers me about the whole situation is, Texas played Oklahoma State on Saturday that weekend. They played Oklahoma State. Texas had a loss, and they lost to Oklahoma, who's not great. And Oklahoma State was ranked way lower than Louisville was. Way lower.
Yeah.
Florida State covered, beat a higher ranked team, and then a team that was ranked 7 jumped them by 5 spots. You explain it to me, I can't.
Well, you brought up Nick Saban and Greg Sankey. And I find it interesting that they matched the 4 versus the 1. Because now we're going to get to see how good Michigan is. And anybody that's followed college football knows that you give Nick Saban a month to prepare, and he has a very, very good chance of beating that other team. So we're going to get to see that. And then you got Texas, Washington. And then it could be the ultimate rematch. Saban versus Sarkisian. Isn't that funny that a fired USC coach who prior to this year lived up to the nickname of 7-win Sark that was given to him in Washington can go in there and beat Nick Saban? I find it funny that the SEC is revolutionized by fired USC coaches. Look at Ole Miss. Ole Miss has never looked so good with their, liposuction and nose job and lip job. I think I heard something, and they've had 2 10-win seasons that in the last 3 years, which has never happened at Ole Miss. So, I mean, what does that tell you? That former USC fired head coaches who had rehab under Saban have helped turn the SEC around.
And Mario Cristobal was also a rehab coach under Nick Saban.
That's right. That's right. So let me know what you think of this. I think if for some reason Nick Saban wins this national championship,
he retires.
He retires because they're going to a 12-team playoff. There's the transfer portal. There's NIL. I don't think he's long for that. I mean, look what happened to him last year with Jimbo Fisher. It's NIL. The transfer portal is totally different. What do you think of that? If it does happen, do you think he retires?
There has been a lot of rumors this year about him retiring. I have heard that rumor. I don't know if he'll do it this year because I don't know that they know who they're going to go after if he does.
Yeah.
That I think they had that person, and I don't think that's the person anymore because I think they had always assumed it was going to be Dabo Swinney. And I don't know if that's the case anymore. So I don't know if he's going to leave without giving it over to someone he approves of, if that makes any sense.
Makes 100%. Yeah, 100%.
Because I think that the coaching pool is a little, I wouldn't say depleted, but it's not as strong as it was. And I think that's because of parity in college football. I think that doesn't mean these coaches are bad, but I think Alabama wants a coach that went undefeated at another powerhouse to take them and then, rah, rah, rah. Like that's the issue for Alabama. For Alabama, if they don't get a national championship winning coach, like if they don't hire Jim Harbaugh, should Michigan win, then it's a failure. I mean, that's just how they look at things. And I think, and by the way, the SEC was down this year and nobody's even talking about it. Nobody's thinking about it. You look at these teams that were still ranked to prop up Alabama's schedule, Georgia's schedule. Why in the hell is Tennessee still ranked?
I asked
they beat nobody.
No, they beat nobody. They were sitting at 7-4, and they were ranked 21.
It's wild.
Yes.
but that was to prop up a schedule. And so you have people being like, well, Alabama's beating all these ranked teams. If you think Tennessee is still a good team, I don't know what to tell you.
Tell me, in your opinion, who was the third best SEC team this year?
I would probably say I would have to go. All right. This is going to be controversial because I'm not going to say Ole Miss. Okay. I'd go in between LSU or Missouri.
Yeah, see, the fact that you had to wait that long or think about it tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah.
And I went through the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly think it's LSU because their offense was so great. And Ole Miss beating them was a little bit of a fluke to me. Alabama had to knock out Jaden Daniels, after the half. And LSU's defense was terrible. But I think Missouri was a little bit of a surprise team, but I also think their defense was kind of suspect as well. So, yeah, I see in the chat, Vanderbilt. I mean, look, the SEC would pump their chest about Vanderbilt. He's not wrong. He's not wrong. And like in the ACC, we look at Duke, and I know Duke was okay this year, right? But like, us Florida State fans were like howling at Clemson losing to Duke. And we laugh all the time at Miami for constantly losing to Duke. And we're like, you lose to them in football? Like, okay.
But Miami beat Texas A&M this year. So
well, so did a lot of people though.
Yeah.
And Jimbo Fisher got fired. I hate that. I hate to see
Here's a question for you. Do you think it was a coincidence that the College Football Playoff Committee, well, let's just say the Bowls selected Florida State and Georgia to play in the Orange Bowl? Do you think that was a coincidence, or do you think that was kind of
it's a money grab?
Or knowing that's kind of like insurance for them? We're going to go ahead and put Florida State against Georgia, and in their minds, Georgia would beat Florida State, and it'll be like, I told you so.
I mean, maybe I think that could be it, but I also think that the Orange Bowl, the people at the Orange Bowl do have a lot of ties at Florida State. I think it was more of the Orange Bowl wanted the higher ratings, but again, they could have ranked. Let me see let me put this better. Had they, well, they really couldn't. Actually, I don't know that they could have taken any other teams for the Orange Bowl because of where they dropped Georgia to.
Okay.
I think contractually they had to take Florida State because that's where the ACC tie-in is. So Florida State was going there anyway. I don't think they could have dropped Georgia any lower. I think money-wise, yeah, they had to take both. But again, it's still a money grab. There's no question about that. They're looking at it thinking, oh, wow, we're going to have some eyeballs here too. And it's honestly just such a slap in the face. But if the guys want to play, I'm going to support it. Fine. I also think it'd be kind of funny if they walked out on the field and took a knee. That's all I'm saying.
Well, Jen, you're drinking a little beverage there, and I'm getting thirsty. And so on the Trojan Star, I always like to suggest a craft beer to upgrade your tailgate beer because life's too short to drink bad beer. And so I've got a Common Space Fresh Pills of LA. You got friends out here in SoCal that support Florida State. Screw the College Football Playoff Committee. Screw the SEC. Screw ESPN. Greg Sankey, you are a G, and you are who you are. You game the system. You only play 8 league games when everybody else tells 9. You don't want to be told what to do. You want to take money from ESPN, and you want to get paid for that 9th game, and ESPN doesn't have any more money because they're losing money and they're losing subscribers. So
absolutely.
I understand why they're doing things the way they're doing. And when you have to look at the bottom line because you've been cutting everybody, and nobody's watching your poor product, hey, you're turning into the WWE. But here's
It
the
really
Florida
is.
State. Jen, cheers to you.
Cheers, cheers. I think, I don't know if you follow my Twitter, but I actually had a clip that I took from John Skipper, who recently was on Dan Levitard's show. And he was talking about, well, the committee doesn't really pick. We try to influence, but we don't get to pick. And I was like, oh, I'm clipping this post clip. I knew it. Like, they're such liars. It's ridiculous. And then, Kirk's constant whining about how Florida State fans are being mean to him. Whatever. You dug your own grave.
He has a support dog, I think, that flies with him on his.
He got a second one. He had to get a second one.
Oh, he has a second one now. I used to respect Kirk Herbstreit.
Me too.
He's been sucked into and he's a Big Ten diehard, but now he's going the corporate line and it's
He has to, he lives in Nashville now. He has to.
So this is a perfect transition. There's been a lot of discussion. Obviously, it was a horrible deal that the ACC got into with ESPN until 2036. Everybody kind of knows about it. And there's been a lot of discussion going on. And you got to check out JenNole2013 on Twitter at JenSanti1890. And she's the co-host of Renegade Report on YouTube with George. But you guys have been talking about, there's some serious discussions about the Big Ten, Florida State moving to the Big Ten. Let us know about what's going on there.
So, I think everybody knows that Florida State has been looking to get out of the ACC, which I think is also part of the problem we were discussing before, because ESPN is tied into the ACC network. The ACC network makes money off of Florida State alone, basically. I know another stunner. Nobody watches, lacrosse on Sunday mornings. I know. I'm shocked too.
Yeah.
So it's just, the ACC has spent so much time on, just sports that's where they put their priorities. That's just where they've been for a long time. Everybody knows that so they knew they needed to get out. But when they started being lippy about it, I also think that could have caused them some issues within ESPN, because Florida State was talking to the Big Ten. They were flirting with the Big Ten. And that's a problem for guess who? Because Fox decided they like those eyeballs. If you look at Florida State with other ACC schools, they beat them in ratings by almost 19 million. Like, there's nobody close to where they are in eyeballs. And, even though Clemson's been the standard, sure.
Clue us in on that. Let us know, because we don't really know out here on the West Coast. In terms of eyeballs, Clemson's had a lot of success. Dabo Swinney.
They have.
What are the comparison and ratings between Florida State and Clemson?
So, I can just tell you, basically, I wish I had the full list in front of me, but with Florida State and Clemson, each game, right? So Florida State, we'll put this on the LSU game. Okay. The LSU game on that Sunday night with Florida State was 9.2 million, something like that. 10.3 with the main demographic. And Clemson Duke, which I know it was Duke, but it was a Monday night. Nobody else was on. I get it. But we're talking 5 million. So you look at that throughout the season, nobody in the SEC or ACC even comes close to Florida. It's almost off by like 15 million viewers. It's wild how much the disparity is. Nobody watches Miami, which I guess that's not unusual. You have to find them on like Telemundo or something. But it's, Clemson has been the better team for the last 10 years. But before that, we're talking 1980. They were relevant 1981.
Correct.
So again, like Florida State is a national brand. Clemson is not. That's just the difference. Like you can walk around anywhere in the country and probably see USC outfits, right? You can see USC shirts, you can see Florida State shirts, you can see Alabama, you can see Notre Dame, Ohio State, Michigan, right? Those are national brands. Clemson's just not one. And so again, I'm not saying anything bad about Clemson at all. I just, it's just different. It's a different, the revenue's different. The eyeballs are different. The wants from TV studios are different. The market in South Carolina isn't huge. And if you look at the Big Ten, they're not in Florida. And Florida, with all the speed, the players, to me, that's the move. And I think that's going to be the move.
I think you're 100% right. And as we talked about, the TV networks control this. They've never had much control. And let's face it, the SEC came into power in 2008, 1 year after Nick Saban was hired at Alabama. They did a record 15-year, $2.5 billion deal that just expired this year. And if you take a look at how successful the SEC has been, it's partly is because of that contract and the relationship with ESPN. And it's also helped their other sports. They never used to be this good in college baseball.
Right.
But they've grown. You know that, being Florida State, how great the program is. USC knows that. Okay. 12 national championships in college baseball. Look at their basketball programs, women's basketball, men's basketball. They've all improved as well. Soccer has improved. So football, it's a choreographed business, and they're smart down there in the South. It just means more. It does. And but it's not a coincidence. But now you have Fox and you have ESPN, and there is a divide going on, and we all see it. And Florida State, whatever they have to do to get out of that contract, because basically those TV networks, they destroyed the Pac-12. They played games with the Pac-12. And I'll tell you what, people still can't believe it, what they did, because they had the money and they had stupid leadership in Larry Scott, who over a decade destroyed this conference because he sold a bad bill of goods, wanting to give, wanting equal revenue. And all the other teams not named UCLA and USC agreed, yes, we should have equal revenue sharing. And what is the main problem right now with the ACC? Florida State saying, hey, we got to renegotiate this.
Yeah. And you know what? I don't blame them. They've been living off of, a welfare conference.
Exactly.
We're stuck making all the money. We bring in the eyeballs.
There you go.
And then they leave us out to pasture all the time so that North Carolina, Wake Forest, and Duke can just get their way.
There you go. And it's unfortunate, but look at what happened to Washington State and Oregon State. People feel sorry for them. Know what? You made the decision. You thought you were as important as USC and UCLA, the eyeballs. And now Oregon, the Ducks will say, hey, wait a minute. We're the sexy brand and this, that, and the other. They are supported by Uncle Phil.
And I mean, no championships. You can be as sexy as you want, but if you can't win anything, we're over, and your coaches keep getting coached by Florida schools. Are you kidding? Who are you kidding? Phil Knight could write a check for anything, but you can't keep him away from bigger programs. Sorry, guys. It's just
Jen, can you repeat that and say it louder for our friends in that little hamlet called Eugene, Oregon? Please, say it louder.
You want me to say it again?
Please.
Your coaches keep getting poached by the Florida States, and then they get fired. Do you know how bad that is for you? Like Willie Taggart didn't even make it a year and a half. Didn't make it a year and a half. They looked at him after his first game. I swear to God, after his first game, they were like, holy crap, we made the wrong decision. And no, I mean, Oregon's a nice niche program, but they got to make their history before they can start pounding their chest. That's how I feel about it. And they haven't made it yet. They played nobody this year. The committee put them at 6, 5, even with losses and stuff. This is crazy. And then they lose to Washington again, who, by the way, all the talking heads said Oregon's going to beat Washington by double digits. So why do we even play the game? Because that's what they just said. You don't have to play the games anymore. Because if a team is favored, that means they're the best. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Here's a great question by Justin Irvin. Justin, thanks for tuning in tonight. How does USC feel about FSU coming to the Big Ten? I'll speak. I mean, I can't speak for all Trojans, but I would love it. It's a national brand. It's Florida. I think Florida State, whatever they have to do to get out of that contract, they do. I think what nobody's really looking at right now is what the College Football Playoff Committee and what ESPN did was tragic. It's bad business. And there's a lot of pissed off people in Florida, and they're going to figure out something. Something's going to happen. And I would love for Florida State and let's say North Carolina, I'd love those two programs or whoever come to the Big Ten. I think that'd be great.
I don't even know that right now they're looking at taking a partner with Florida State. I think that's the weird part about how everything is going. At first everybody was saying it was going to be Florida State Clemson. I don't see that right now. I think that's kind of taken a back seat. So and Miami, I don't even think Miami is involved because they don't have a stadium. Their facilities are crap. They rent their stadium. Tragic. But I just love to take my Miami take. Sorry. But it's a weird situation right now because some people like within the community, we've known that they were going to get out. We know they were going to leave. Some people really were diehard on the SEC. I have been bullish that it was going to be the Big Ten for months. This isn't a surprise to me. And I think it's because Fox is involved. Fox wants the eyeballs. Florida State brings the eyeballs. And you just got to follow. Like I told people on the show, follow the tweets. Who's tweeting about Florida State's ratings? It ain't ESPN.
Yeah, ESPN's in a challenging position right now because if you take a look at it, the Big Ten is going to have football all day long on Saturday with 3 different networks, with Fox, with CBS, and with NBC. And, the fact that they got Oregon and Washington at half price is a bargain. I mean, they pulled it off. So now that's going to help with the TV windows on the Pacific, the Pacific time zone. And it's a national conference. And so you can already see it, and they're going to play their games. When I say that, Fox versus ESPN. I mean, do you want to be the little regional NASCAR league, or do you want to be a national league? And Greg Sankey will go ahead and push back. Well, hey, we only have to travel a total of 1,200 miles all year to play our teams. Well, yeah, exactly. We know your game, but do you want to be a real league with great teams from coast to coast? Because that's what it is. If you're talking about how your team's the best, your league's the best team and best league and prepares everybody for the NFL, I'm sorry, but if you're playing in Buffalo, you can't just play the Jets and Pittsburgh. You're going to have to go to Seattle. You're going to have to go to Miami. You're going to have to get on those planes and not just take a bus.
What else is a funny part is that the college football playoff is actually going out to bid next year.
Well, there you go. Exactly. So that was part of the deal. You bring up a great point, Jen. So, and that was actually one of the good things that the ACC, the Big Ten, and the Pac-12 did, is that there was discussion that ESPN wanted to lock up the exclusive rights for the 12-team playoff, and they didn't. They weren't allowed because those 3 conferences said, no, you know what? You should bid them out because you can make a lot more money. And that's what they did. And that's part of the reason out there, college football fans, why this last year of
that's why they did it.
14 playoff is they punked it. When it's a monopoly, it's bad business. So it was the perfect storm
It
and they
really
screwed.
was.
And a lot of people don't understand that. They think you
Mm.
win tinfoil hat. No, what you need to do is understand that the mouthpieces at ESPN, like a Reese Davis, a Kirk Herbstreit, now they got the newest one with Pat McAfee. I love Pat McAfee. But
Greg
then you got,
McElroy,
right. Oh, McElroy. Oh, please. And then you
Dan
got Paul Seibel.
Orlovsky.
Those guys are
Oh,
all pawns.
yeah.
They're all pawns. The king and the queen is ESPN is the business executives. They are the ones who generate the eyeballs, pay the ads, bring in ad revenue money, and they are the ones that monitor the people cutting the cord, and they got to make the layoffs, and they need to make money. Okay, and so they make the decisions, and they tell the pawns what to say, and they run interference, and like a Stephen A. Smith who makes no sense at all. But that's so when you have that for 10 years, you have a monopoly. And now it's going to be open for bid. So it's going to be real competition.
Well, I mean, another thing, I mean, Stephen A just really disgusted me after this happened when he was like, well, if they had had Deion Sanders being the coach, they would have gotten in. And how in the world did actual college football people not look at him and say, if Deion Sanders was the coach, they would have won 3 games. So they wouldn't have even had to worry about it. Okay? Yeah. This is such a money grab. It's all a money grab. You know, they promoted Colorado and Deion all year. It was everybody knew this was going to be a mess. ESPN gave Florida State the worst time when they didn't hire Deion, and Florida State didn't hire him for a reason. And I'm sure Colorado fans love to follow me wherever I go. They're going to clip this and then call me a racist. I get it. You can do that if you want to. But he's a terrible coach. This is a mess that he's doing. It's a clown show. It's awful. Those kids didn't even have insurance out on their field. And yet, here's ESPN after a 13-0 team was left out of the playoffs. Well, if Deion, who we promote, have on our show, have recruits come on, all these things. If he was the coach, it would have been fine. And that is so dismissive of what Mike Norvell has done. It's gross. But they don't care because it gets them clicks.
Yeah, and so here's something that college football fans may not understand or even know is that there's never been uniformity in college football. And fans really don't want it because they want things the way it's always been, tradition. I guess what I'm trying to say is when they started this 14 playoff, they didn't make every conference have the same type of rules, meaning that you play 9 conference games, you play 8. That should be something that comes to the table so you don't have these flukes like Florida State being 13-0 and not make the college football playoff. Now, granted, how would they ever here's 2 flaws, and give me your take on this, is that you go from the BCS and 2 teams to play in a national championship to 4. I mean, isn't it common sense that if you have 5 power conferences and let's say you have 5 undefeated conference champions, which I know is very small chance of happening, but what are you saying for the 65 teams that are non-power 5? It's like you could be a Boise State and be 12, 13-0, but you know damn right that they will talk about their strength of schedule that last week and they'll poo-poo. And so it's not a level playing field at all. They never have a chance. ESPN will talk about a chance and a great story for the first 7 or 8 weeks, but they'll be the first ones to shoot them down. So here's a situation where there was 3 unbeaten teams, with Florida State being one of them, and you had a couple with 1 loss. So again, it's not, I don't understand how they don't make it uniform. And we're going to have a similar situation, I think, when we go to 12 teams. What are your thoughts, Jen, going to 12?
Well, I mean, one, you're going to have about 4 SEC teams and maybe 3 Big Ten teams in, depending on if Penn State, I mean, I'm saying this, if it were today, right? I'm not saying with the new teams going to the Big Ten or any of that, with Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC. I'm talking about today. You would have, the majority would be SEC. There would be 3 Big Ten teams because they've got to squeeze them in too. And the rest of everybody else would be fighting for the scraps. That's it.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is they keep on moving the goalposts.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I found that out.
Yeah. So, and it's going to happen again. You hit it on the head. People are thinking, well, when you have 12 teams, we're not going to have this problem. No, we are going to have this.
And to me, that's such a gross thing to say. Like, I've heard so many ESPN guys be like, well, Florida State would be fine next year. Go tell that to those seniors who aren't coming back. Go tell that to Jordan Travis. Go tell that to Tate Rodemaker, who probably feels like he performed better at Florida, and didn't get concussed. Or go tell that to the poor kid at Louisville who came in as a third stringer, who actually didn't participate in the loss. Go tell that to him. Go tell that to him. Wait till next year, guys. You'll be fine. It's not a big deal. I know y'all went undefeated and y'all did your best and you basically put your bodies on the line. Who, by the way, Brock Lynn was injured in the Louisville game. Stayed in that game.
And, Tate Rodemaker, what's the latest on Tate? Is he going to be able to play in the bowl game?
Oh, yeah. He was always going to be. He was in concussion protocol. Honestly, if that game had been maybe a couple hours later, I think he would have played.
Yeah.
It was a timing thing because of the protocols for concussions. Honestly, I think, or maybe not a couple hours later. If that game was on Sunday, he would have played instead of Saturday. And that's what's gross. So they said, oh my God, we watched it with a third stringer who wasn't going to play. We're keeping you out, knowing full well Tate Rodemaker was going to be back.
Well, Jen, we're getting short on time here, and I really appreciate you coming on tonight because I know it's the holiday season and you have things going on. I'll appreciate everybody who's joined us tonight for this episode. You have a lot of things going on with holidays, and we wish everybody 2 weeks from today. I can't believe how fast things are coming. But Jen, let us know how people out here can follow you and what you have going on with Renegade Report, you and George. You had a great show on Sunday. Loved. I think there was over 450 people in the chat. It was on fire.
It really was. It really was. It was like a big show.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Everybody can go follow us at the Renegade Report. It's on YouTube as well. And you can get me at JenNole2013 on Twitter if you would like to. But also, we've got some really great interviews on the Renegade Report. I had Jake Crane on. We had Jake Crane on. He has an amazing, he's preaching on this, discusses it. We also had Max Chadwick from the Preferred Walk-On podcast, which is that was like my celebrity having on. I have to admit it. They do such an amazing job breaking down games. So he's been on. There's interviews out there if you guys want to go listen. Or you can catch us live. We're going to be live tomorrow night. And then we're going to be live on Thursday or Friday. I'm not for sure which one just yet. George is going to get mad at me because I wasn't for sure on the day. I'm kidding. He won't. So, and then on Sundays. So we're trying to keep this all going, and please come follow us, get in the chat. Let's discuss. We could all be Big Ten friends here soon. I don't know. George just responded. He said, LOL. But so I think I'm just saying, I want people to know this isn't for like 2024. Like Florida State wouldn't be gone until, there he goes. Tuesday, Friday, and Sunday. Okay. Thank you, George. I'm sorry. I forget things. I have too much in my head. So it would be 2025 and we could all be friends here soon.
I appreciate you coming on the show. College football fans, Trojan fans out there, if they could do USC dirty like they did in 2003 and in 78,
which they did,
and look what they did to Florida State now, it doesn't end. it's an agenda. It's the TV money. It's ESPN, and it's a committee.
And by the way, Texas going to the SEC too also helped them. Like, let's be real about that. This was ESPN and the SEC all in one.
Great
100%.
They're all, I mean, Texas is loaded with money. You think they're going to do Texas dirty before coming to the SEC?
Who,
Texas,
by the way, hasn't been relevant in like 30 years.
So, yes, this is what's great about it is, Jen, you see through all the BS. I love your passion. And Trojans out there, you got to follow Jen. Support Florida State. Screw ESPN and the College Football Playoff Committee. I don't have a tinfoil hat. I'm wearing the LBC hat. I'm real. Come at me, you haters. I don't care because I've got receipts and I just gave you a few. I can give you even more. And Jen's got some too. So follow Jen, follow Florida State. I hope that you guys beat Georgia in the Orange Bowl, and we'll be rooting for you, Jen.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Good meeting you. Have a great holiday season.
Thank you.
And thanks for joining us tonight. Good night, everybody.
Thank you guys so much. Good night.